Welcome back to another essential recap. Today, we will take a look at the story called The Whole Truth.
Yeah, that might be true. I don't know. Or care.
The premise of the movie is set in the modern-day United States, where we get to meet defense lawyer Ramsey, who is working on a case of murder by a 17-year-old kid, Mike Lassiter. Ramsey is revealed to be familiar with both Mike and his father Boone, who was murdered by Mike and is appointed by Mike's mom Loretta to save the child from being charged as guilty. The biggest problem Ramsey is facing with this case is that Mike has been refusing to talk at all, making things even more complicated. The trial begins and the defense proceeds without an opening statement. The first witness is a flight attendant, Miss Morley, who frequently accompanied Boone on his private flights from time to time. Morley reveals things that happened on the last flight Boone hired her for and explains how Boone and Mike got into a little argument about the college Mike will be attending in the future. Boone tended to insist on Stanford, whereas Mike is shown to be interested in attending Reed instead for personal reasons. Without any information to start from, Ramsey points out the possibility of Boone having affairs with multiple women, while questioning the attendant, and the trial proceeds with the second witness being Boone's limo driver. The driver testifies not noticing anything unusual on the last drive he had with Boone prior to his death, while stressing about the fact that he drove him straight to the airport after picking him up from his place. It seems to me that Mr. Driver is hiding some events here. Ramsey stresses the fact that he can't really do much if Mike stays silent before the first session wraps up, and proceeds to meet Janelle, the daughter of Ramsey's professional friend, who he had hired as his assistant on the case. Ramsey plays a little game with Janelle, just to figure out how quick she is to catch on, asking her about who lied today in the case. We get to know how both the attendant and the driver had flaws in their statements. I was spot on about the driver's mistake there, it seems. The trail continues, and the policewoman who first arrived at the Lassiter residence explains how she found Boone stabbed in his room, with Mike sitting right next to him claiming, "I should have done it a long time ago." Ramsey points out the inconsistency of the statement with the one provided by the police for the case, but the woman sticks to her word, claiming that Mike did indeed use the word "I." Ramsey leaves the court before telling Janelle to visit their war room, which is basically just a hotel room, for further intel, while disclosing how he had low hopes for Janelle, who was a former corporate employee, to continue after coming to know what was waiting for her. Boone's neighbor comes up as the next witness in the court and explains how Mike used to have a strong bond with his dad as a child, aspiring to become a lawyer just like Boone, but the bond started to fade away as time passed. The neighbor confessed Boone's rude behavior to both his family and friends, revealing how he always belittled Loretta, even in front of others, which led to an argument between the father and son at a party. With Mike staying silent, things seem to not be much in the favor of our defense. Janelle asks Ramsey about the same thing, assuming that they are screwed, while Ramsey refers to Muhammad Ali's fight with Foreman, hinting that the plan is to exhaust the prosecution before starting the counterattack. I don't know about Janelle, but these words sure gave me some hope in the case. The head detective states how sure he is that Mike is in fact the murderer, and there is not much to think about in this case afterwards, followed by the head of the forensic department, who also refers completely to the teenager being the certain murderer. Ramsey's silence makes the jury think about how everything is going too well before he steps up to question the forensic guy. The day ends with a wobbly statement from Mike's former friend, and a flashback shows how Loretta was considering a divorce but was pushed by Boone, who threatened to kill her if he ever thought about something like that. Ramsey reveals that Loretta will be called next in the trial, and later that night indulges in a conversation with Janelle at their war room. Janelle explains some stuff about her past and how she got kicked out of her previous corporate firm for having an affair. Our lawyer leaves to prepare Loretta for her statement the next day, while clearly stating that Janelle got thrown away because the man she was trying to have an affair with was a good man. Ramsey did not have to be this mean, did he? Moving on with the case, Loretta is called just as Ramsey predicted, and she reveals how she did not have the best married life with Boone, as he constantly inflicted her with both physical and verbal abuse to the day of his death. She testifies the events of the day of the murder, claiming that she went to take a shower after Boone said some vile stuff to her, and claims that she found him dead in his room afterwards. Ramsey starts to question Loretta himself and makes her testify about the physical abuse she was going through before proving the statements with picture proof of bruises on her body from the day after Boone's murder. The prosecution did point out the obvious, that this whole testimony seems to be pre-planned, but Ramsey did manage to tilt the case in the jury's mind with the pictures, at least in my opinion. Janelle questions our lawyer about why he would hold onto evidence, such as the photos, but he continues to give her unclear answers, until a note from Mike himself made him panic. Ramsey rushes to have a conversation with Mike, who had decided to stand up in the court himself to confess what had happened, while threatening to drop Ramsey as his lawyer if he tried to force him or anything along those lines. Things got even more complicated than they already were for Ramsey, as now he cannot even make Mike skip the upcoming confession by setting up an appointment with a psychiatrist, as Mike was obviously completely sane. Loretta complained about why Ramsey is letting Mike do this when he was supposed to save him, but he ends up calming her down by claiming that even a defense lawyer cannot hold the defendant back from his constitutional right. It clearly seems to me that the one-sided case is finally picking up some pace at this point. The trial begins the next day, and the judge offers the defense to present another opening statement, as he skipped it at the beginning of the trial. Ramsey explains the situation between him and Mike, and how he will be unable to do so before Mike gets on the spot to provide his statement on the case. Mike, who had not spoken to literally anyone after the death of his father, begins to get questioned by Ramsey, and it gets very clear to us that Mike is aware of what he is doing when he claims that he had the right to stay silent in every possible way. Mike gets questioned about him being aware of the situation between his mom and dad, and he claims to have heard noises of domestic abuse following up, by claiming that his dad's behavior with his mother was never the reason why he did this in the first place. Mike's claim surely put our lawyer in a worse spot. Mike's next statement throws the whole court off when he reveals his reason for committing the crime to be his own security from his father, who was molesting him ever since he was only 12 years old. Okay, so I don't know about the courtroom, but Mike's statement here took me by great surprise. I was never expecting the kid to be going through such abuse, and his father being the one involved threw me off even more. I don't quite know how to react to this, honestly. Mike testified these events of being molested with the prosecution as well, and after the trial ended for the day, Ramsey hints at how this must have been the reason for Mike not telling him anything in the first place. The prosecution calls for the flight attendant again, asking her if she had seen any events relating to Mike getting molested by his father on the plane. The attendant denies anything like that, claiming that she would have stopped Boone if such events had happened. From the defense, Janelle steps up to question the attendant, and Mike hints to her to ask about someone named Ginsburg. Janelle follows a rather unusual way of questioning and leads to asking the attendant about her extramarital affair with the co-pilot of her plane named Ginsburg. Janelle does a good job at making the attendant accept that she had spent a lot of time in the cabin with the pilots during the 6 hours of flight, implying that even if Mike was molested, she could have missed it. Impressive work by Janelle, I must say. Janelle gets praised for her sharpness by our lawyer, but things take a twist when she realizes that there might be a whole other side to the case. She confronts Loretta about how Mike might have lied in the first place in an attempt to save his mom, who was the real murderer, and later proceeds to have a chat with Ramsey at the hotel about how he never realized this fact, leaving the hotel after getting upset. Ramsey is worried that Janelle's dropping out might put a bad impression as the case is finally getting in their hands, but is relieved to find her continuing the case the next day. The defense and the prosecution both present their closing statements to the jury, where Ramsey stresses the fact that Mike should be declared not guilty as his actions were led by his father's sexual abuse, while the prosecution requests the jury to consider this a first-grade murder, as Mike is in fact a law prodigy. The moment of truth arrives, and Mike is revealed to be drawing something before he asks his mom one more time about whether she was being abused or not. The jury declares their unanimous decision, declaring Mike guilty, since that was the right thing to do according to them. Mike was having some flashbacks during the decision that did make it seem to me that Janelle might have been right with her deductions. The case wraps up, and Mike confronts Ramsey after court, claiming that he knows Ramsey was the one who killed his dad instead of his mom. I never even looked at the case from this perspective. Ramsey denies the accusation by Mike, claiming that finding a watch is not real evidence, and that further investigation would only hurt Mike in the end. The mother and son return to their lives as the case concludes, and after the court, Ramsey recalls what actually had happened. It turns out that Ramsey was having an affair with Loretta, and to save her from Boone, he and Loretta plotted everything from the bruises to killing Boone together. Their plan was to initially put the blood on Loretta's hands as a case of self-defense, but they had to change it since Mike came home earlier than expected that day. The movie concludes with this big reveal, and I honestly was not expecting things to swing the way they did at the end. All in all, The Whole Truth, 2016, is a good thriller movie with many unexpected twists and turns to keep you interested. If you're looking for a nice mystery to watch this weekend, I'd recommend you give this a try. I'm sure you won't be disappointed. Thanks for watching another Essential Recap. Please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. We appreciate the support.